Hello and welcome to the Animation Kimmunication podcast, your source for discussion about animation, film, fandom, and more. So please join your host, I Love Kim Possible a Lot, or KP, and Lauren Kizich, the Abbey Roadie, for today's discussion. If you like what you hear, please remember to support by giving a like, a follow, as well as subscribing to the main I Love Kim Possible a Lot channel on YouTube. Spread the word and keep being a part of a great community. This episode is appropriate for all ages.
Hi everyone, welcome to this spooky episode of Animation Kimmunication, except the topic isn't really too spooky unless you are one of those people who don't bathe at cons. Please take baths.
621.
621. We'll get into what that is for people who are just like, what does that mean? Is that like their secret nerd code or something? It's like 911, but for nerd emergencies. Anyway,
I mean, it's not wrong.
Okay, so this episode specifically is about online conventions, and I'll introduce that subject and our guest Dex beforehand, and then we'll get into. We have a couple of headlines, I guess. You know, as COVID is generally happening, like, the entertainment industry is slowing down, so people are having to be creative with the things that they're doing. So we're just like, well, someone made a tweet today.
Puppet
but it's
shows
not like
are
that.
back.
Guess what? Disney Plus. Oh, I do have a headline for that. I remember. Anyway, okay. So our topic is online conventions, which is something that a lot of, niche communities are doing. I don't think there's any Lightbox wasn't niche. So just, I guess,
unless you want to consider the animation industry niche. I mean, in a way it is.
Yeah. So I guess these are more convention. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Dex, and then I'll introduce you. But these are more conventions that already have either a base to cater to, or already established conventions that have been going, and we're just like, I guess we'll just switch to being online because people want this to happen, but COVID. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'd say there's 3 categories there for talking about later. There's your huge ones like Comic-Con, your medium-sized ones, 20,000 people or less, and then your ones that spawned entirely for online.
Mm-hmm. So, I guess if you're wanting to contribute to some nerd communities and you don't know where to start, or, there have been online conventions before COVID, but now there's just more dependence on them, I guess, especially for artists because they have virtual vendor halls or specific, sales on their SD or commissions and stuff like that if they're vending at conventions, from what I understand. But anyway, why don't you introduce yourself, Dex, and talk about what you're doing now with online cons and what your con experience has been in general for not online cons.
Sounds good. Well, hi, I'm Dexanth, or Eliana. I have been staffing conventions since 2013, starting with TrotCon and almost entirely in the My Little Pony space. I was the vice chair of BronyCon for its final 2 years, and once the pandemic started, I founded PonyFest Online, as well as this past weekend, in fact, literally today, helping out with IdleCon 2020, which is another one that started as an online-only convention.
Okay, and what is Idle? Is that just a general anime con, or what's it about?
It's specifically for, idol culture. So you could think of it as if you had a con for, say, Dragon Ball Z and Bleach and all of the fighting anime, you could think of idols as another category of anime and, weeb culture.
Yeah, we really need to do an Anime 101 episode one of these days, because, I saw, Lauren, as if you've heard last show, is really into, Lupin the Third, and I've watched Death Note, and I like Miyazaki. Look at me, I'm an animator. So, that's my
Miyazaki would be so mad. Miyazaki would be so mad that you referred to him as anime.
I know.
Anime
but
was
it's
a
just
mistake. Is his most famous non-quote.
But yeah, anyway, so let's go to the animation news. Spooky, scary skeletons themed, except not really. So I guess I'll do like the Disney Plus news that I've heard, and then Lauren, you can do the other thing that happened, I guess.
Okay.
So the Disney Plus news, I've heard this from an official source by official source, like targeted like updates in my timeline on Twitter, you know. But like, for those who don't know, I'm really interested in like the business model of Disney Plus, because I think Disney is the strongest, or one of the strongest, you know, entertainment companies in general. I mean, I don't think that's, you know, I don't think that's like a bad statement. I think that's just a generally true statement. So especially now that like the mass culture has access to like all the canon and all the sequels just like whenever they want, like how is that affecting their consumer practices and stuff like that. So I'm a nerd. So anyway, so Disney Plus has just added this feature. I don't know how it works yet. I haven't tried it yet. But if you and your friends all have Disney Plus accounts, you can all now watch things at the same time. You can like connect your Disney Plus accounts and like, you know, stream-ish.
So like the Amazon Watch.
Yeah, Amazon
feature.
Watch or Rabbit
Yeah.
before that broke, right? Rabbit broke. So I think that's kind of
broke/was annihilated.
they just like stopped uploading. Like Rabbit was another streaming service that just like totally they just discontinued it, I think, because the company went bankrupt or something. But anyway, I guess it's a motivator to, I mean, I think it's really smart because this probably, I mean, this is something people were doing anyway, I bet. So to have an official like way to do it probably encourages people who don't have Disney Plus to buy it, because they're just like, well, I want to watch this with my friend, but I don't want to pay $10, but oh, friendship pressure for your $10. So, you know, and then specifically the profile pictures. So how Disney Plus works, just like Netflix, is you can choose your own profile pictures, and for Disney Plus, it's all Disney characters. They have like most canon characters, like even like characters like Robin Hood, and you know, they're kind of adding more as they go. And they had Kim Possible at launch. I think I mentioned this, and I was like, yeah. So she's the only character though from the show, but they have like the majority of the Phineas and Ferb cast. And just like, I want more Kim Possible characters just for my ego, like, you know. So anyway,
You mean your Shigo?
I feel like there's a She-Ra pun to link into there, but it's not coming.
Yeah, I'm sure. Like, we have the power or something. Well, She-Ra is an icon for Netflix, so, but She-Ra isn't owned by Disney yet. Anyway, so your avatars will carry over. So I don't know how it works if like you and your friend are both Baby Yodas, because you can't choose the same avatar like within family units. To avoid confusion. So I don't know, but in theory, this is a neat idea. And if you want to spend time with friends and you like Disney movies, watch some Treasure Planet, bother Disney Plus to add those icons. I'm hoping they'll do something for the anniversary of Treasure Planet, because that's in November and I'm like paying attention to things. So we'll see what happens. But as we get more nostalgic properties like driving the brand. Anyway, there's my media analysis. Lauren, what's going on with the movie theaters?
Yeah. So we joke saying, you know, there really isn't anything spooky to this, but I can say that there is something going to the grave, and that's Regal Cinemas. They are shuttering all of their US and UK theaters. It is the second largest theater chain in the US, right behind AMC. So And they're actually going to be closing up, as of recording this, they're going to be closing up all of their theaters as soon as Monday. And as of recording it, that would be tomorrow.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's like, it was mostly, at least as according to the various sources that have been reporting this, it is according to all these sources that because of the delay on the new James Bond movie, No Time to Die, which I guess all these theaters were banking on it to be released soon, so that it would generate revenue and get people back in theaters. That is not happening. So, yeah, This looks like it could be very well the end of Regal Cinemas as we know it. And that has left it up to debate as to what is happening because that's one of the few theater chains that has had theaters reopened up in the middle of COVID. Not every theater, but a good number of them. But it does make people wonder, especially varying county to county and state to state, what that means for theatrical releases for animated movies coming up, be it in a couple weeks or even in a month. And that means, like, we're looking at Pixar's Soul, and we're looking at The Croods 2, and then we're also looking at, and I'm gonna say it, Lupin the Third is getting its U.S. release finally, at last, 2 weeks from this point, and yet, Regal is shuttering before they have that release. And so, so people are wondering, oh, is it just going to be down to like Cinemark and maybe AMC? I don't know. Maybe a couple Pacific theaters left? I don't know.
Oh my god, I just imagine, like, we'll have grandchildren and they're just like, you remember Blockbuster Video, Grandma? You remember movie theaters? Remember when people actually went to a movie theater? Like, they had to go to a physical place to see a movie? And now I can just, like, watch them with this thing in my brain that, you can watch them whenever you want. I'm like, yeah, we had that. It was called imagination. But anyway, we'll see. I mean, it's also, like, the only other thing I realistically see all the theaters, like, is turning into, like, haunted houses or, like, doing some, like, shitty Phantom of the Opera, like, thing where they're just like, oh, it's haunted. It's the ghost of the economy. So, I just don't know, like, what they're realistically going to do with all those buildings, because that's a lot of buildings, and that's, like, we still got to hold out, like, coronavirus isn't...
Well,
Go ahead.
To be fair, a number of movie theaters have turned into gyms, but then again, that's not doing too hot right now, is it?
No, I guess we'll just see what happens. I think they should turn movie theaters into, like, very small conventions, because, like, you could just have panel rooms and you can, like
convention halls, mini convention halls?
Yeah, like, space to rent out, like, for Boy Scouts and, like, church events, but, like, you could go to, like, depending on what kind of sermon you wanted. That's my only idea.
And I feel God in this movie theater tonight.
Jesus bless this screen. May you keep it free of technical difficulties.
I just imagine, like, someone going in the back and doing, like, the Jesus pose, and it's reflected on, like, as a shadow on the screen, and just like, there you go. Jesus is with us. Anyway, that's our bad jokes. So thanks for coming. Please subscribe. Okay, let's get to the actual, like, content of the thingy. So, do you have any, like, general questions, Lauren, about, like, conventions, like, as someone who isn't as seasoned in conventions to, like, bring up? Or do you want me to just, like, go into, like, my pre-plan of things?
I think it's better if you lead in, because then I usually get questions as I go along, so.
Okay, that's fair. I was wondering if, like, I don't know how many people are listening to this who were like, what's a convention? Like, I don't know, like, what range we're dealing with.
Yeah, because I'm like, I'm not about to be the voice going, what's a convention? What is this?
People have fun?
A big group of nerds who come together to celebrate something particularly nerdy.
Yeah, essentially. So, for, like, we did a convention, like, 101, like, episode, like, I think episode 6 or 7, something early. Where we kind of explained, like, the marketing of conventions, but to break it down in simpler terms, you have this big building that someone with money invests in, and they fly in, like, guests from, like, voiceover or, like, people specific to a general community, and then people pay admission, and then there's panels, which, like, demonstrate something or premiere something sometimes. Like, I usually, when I do panels, I premiere, like, a new video before it goes on YouTube, or they, like, teach skills, like, there's a lot of writing and, like, drawing panels and that kind of thing. I really want to do an animation panel, like, when all this is over. eventually, like a panel I actually get to teach something in, instead of just like, hey, thanks for coming, see this thing first before no one else does, have a cookie. But and then you have the vendor hall, where, you know, either let me backtrack. So Dex, this is something I don't know, because usually for pony conventions it's individual artists who are like selling posters and like knickknacks and 3D printed stuff. So what would you say would be like a like the range of like products people make for conventions? Because like prints is obviously one, and then for maybe non-pony cons or conventions with more of a corporate backing, how does that work as far as like, are there like reps coming in like vending t-shirts for Marvel? Like that's something I have no idea about, so maybe if you know anything.
Sure. So, I mean, yeah, I would say it breaks down based on whether or not the convention topic is something that effectively is the product of a major corporation. For example, since I came up in the My Little Pony space, that is a major corporate product, but Hasbro's target demographic that they actually make products for is small children. So, as a result, for the adult fans, there, wasn't often a lot of things to buy. Ergo, you would have fans making things ranging from posters and prints to coffee mugs to little charms and knickknacks, like buttons and badges, all the way up to, I'm literally sitting under 3 or 4, full-sized My Little Pony blankets. So the
you came prepared.
Creativity there has expanded over 8 years or 10 years as vendors. Really, it was the people who kept going were like, well, my walls are covered in posters. I don't need more posters. Well, I already have 30 pony coffee mugs. And that's been a big reason why the vendors keep on inventing new stuff. But that also only works because Hasbro doesn't shut them down, since it's kind of a symbiotic relationship. With anime conventions, it's very different. In that anime's market often is already marketing to adult fans and adult collectors, which means that as a fan artist, you are competing with the official products, for customer attention. So where in a, traditional con, doesn't have to worry about that. You may only have a vendor hall. In anime cons and bigger furry cons, it's often split up into exhibitors and artist alley, where exhibitor could be seen as your official vendors, as well as just people who are big enough to justify buying an entire booth, whereas your artist alleys are buying a table, and it's usually an individual who can fit everything they're selling into 2 suitcases.
Yeah. It's really tricky because I think Lauren has vended once, right? You vended at ELA, and you helped...
Yes, back in 2017.
Yeah, and you helped Christy, I guess, as needed for stuff, like when there was conventions. And I've vended, like the last 2 years, I usually didn't vend. I was usually like, I'll do panels and I'll hang out. But the thing I found out as the more conventions I did is just like in between panels, there's really nothing to do. So I like keeping busy. And I get a lot of, as artists in general, like, it's kind of hard to expect what to market for. Like, for something so niche as ponies, like, you can draw some, popular ponies that people, usually have merch in, like, popular characters. But when you're going into an anime convention or something with a huge saturation of product, then you're just kind of shooting in the dark. Like, I'm going to draw this big, fancy, picture of some person that I like from this anime and just kind of hope that someone who likes that anime and likes your specific art style will want to buy it. Like the majority of my vending at conventions is commissions. It's like barely any KP stuff, because the other time people are like, what's a KP? What's an I Love Kim Possible? You should change that. I'm like, I know, Samantha, it's part of the thing. So, it's when I started doing non-pony cons, that was a big distinction between the artist alley and the exhibitors. And I guess too, we should also mention that like the general like products that Hasbro was making, especially in the early days of the ponyness, They weren't the best like quality, and that's why people were dependent on fan creators, as well as like the plushie scene. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I remember. Like, I remember like there was a pink Celestia, and everyone's just like, why is she pink? Like, Celestia is a horse that's supposed to be white, but she's pink, and people were like, why is she pink? That's not show accurate. And so like people would buy it sometimes, but ironically. So then we got a pink one, and it worked out kind of. But over the course of the fandom, we got the Guardians of Harmony line, which was kind of more catered to like everyone and not just children who will break things.
Yeah, like I have a Celestia from years ago that was custom painted to make it more show accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the days when you could not get that because, Hasbro didn't make it.
Yeah, back in my day. So, like, if you watch, like, John's Brony documentary, so John Delancey did a Brony documentary. It's called, I think it's called Bronies.
Brony's The Unexpected Tale of Adult Fans of My Little Pony, something like that.
So I think it's on Netflix. So, you can watch it if you want to. I guess it's okay. It's kind of interesting to see, but that shows a lot of the early culture of like people having to make very custom themed, characters and very specific, molds of different characters comparatively to like what was on the market. So, and then now like, plushies in general like was something we didn't have, and like people are like, I'll give you $500 if you make this character I like, and then it became a thing.
They still go for $500.
I know.
Like, it's 10 years in and Hasbro still never made high-quality plushies, so that market still exists.
It's like, it's like I even have a little beanie plushie version of my OC from somebody that I got for like an actually very reasonable too, especially if you're supporting independent plushie makers, which you should, please do. It's worth every penny. Is that Kazi's plush made me a beanie of my little Beanie Baby kind of plushie of my OC, and it's like if she were in the show, it'd be considered show accurate. Like, it's just down to the finest detail. You couldn't get that with something that is mass produced.
Yeah, so, and I would sell, for pony conventions, I would get a build of my pony, my character, and, I'd do a silent auction on it. And it did pretty well, especially at BronyCon. Like, I think we made 3. And, and then we had little baby KPs that people would buy, and it'd be great. And I wish I made more, but decisions. So, Dex, how did you start? Oh my god, Chewy, get out of here. Chewy's my dog. Chewy, out. Chewy, give me a second.
This is the advantage to having cats. One of my cats is literally sitting not even 2 feet away, on top of the cushion next to me. But she's just nice
Sorry,
and
Chewy
quiet.
can open the door with his nose, so I can't really do anything about keeping him out when he sneaks in.
He's too smart for his own good.
I mean, he's smart, but in all the wrong ways. Like, he wants attention consistently, and oh god, he's annoying. Anyway. But, so Dex, how did you start volunteering for conventions, and how would someone do that if they so choose, like maybe after COVID's over?
So in my case, it was actually an accident. I came up through a small community known as the Round Stable, and back in 2013, we had recently launched our front page, which was meant to be, a My Little Pony news source. I went to TrotCon in 2013, the editor-in-chief was there, and he was like, hey, want to make an article about TrotCon? And I did that, and I started just doing more articles for them, because being press was fun, honestly. You got to go places and talk to people you didn't necessarily get to do as a fan. And then in 2014, I got sucked into charity work, more or less last moment. The charity auction needed some help. I ended up doing that, and that's how I started staffing BronyCon. And it was all downhill from there, in 2017, 2018, I was staffing 10 to 12 conventions a year. I kind of burned out on that because I was addicted. It's an addiction.
Oh.
And Yeah, I finally hit my point where this is a little too much, and I burned out on exhaustion. But
yeah, considering how much prep goes into each convention, even the small ones take so much time and effort to make and to, like, plan ahead and organize. It's just like, that's a crazy schedule.
oh gosh, yes. I mean, that's why you'll find a lot of regular convention staffers tend to have one or two cons that they might serve in a high-level role, something like the head of a department or a chair, and then a bunch of other conventions where they work as ordinary staffers. And the reason for that is because when you are an experienced con hand, the other conventions know, cool, I can hire you, and kind of the deal is, I'm not going to join any of the, a lot of the pre-work because I know what I'm doing. I'm here to show up and help you guys out, and it kind of works because you all know each other already and, know that they can be trusted to execute on that without a need for training. But if you want to get into it, the reality is cons are almost always starving for volunteers. It is easily the biggest thing that we can always use more of because people grow up, they get jobs, and then they start becoming busy. A lot of the skills you can learn at staffing conventions, you start realizing can be used or can be turned into careers. And the really good people, that's what happens. They find something in cons they love doing. They find a way to start getting paid for it. And then they realize that they don't have that much time to volunteer for conventions anymore.
It's the circle of life.
It really is.
Yeah, I mean, I'm one of the people that are always kind of pushing, like, to do, like, volunteer work that people want to do. So, like, part of, like, our production team is, like, so you need to work on your artist portfolio anyway, and I'm sure it works similar for conventions, but, like, you want to work on your artist portfolio anyway, like, do this background art or do this announcement art for this guest that we just booked, and then we can put it on your website, and then you can be like, this image was used for, it adds credibility to the thing that you need to do anyway. So, like, I think it's all about, like, being firm with what you think you can handle, ideally. I know a lot of people bite off more than they can chew, but, like, and kind of trying to figure out, like, what you're good at and stuff, but a lot of times, I find that in order to get your foot in the door somewhere, anywhere, that you have to kind of work for free or kind of schmooze a little bit in order to feel like, or have the higher ups feel like you can be trusted to do, like, heavier stuff and, things that require more responsibilities than just showing up.
Yeah, like in con scenes, you're pretty much never gonna have somebody who comes in and is just handed a department, like, without any experience. The only time that happens is when a group of friends goes, let's start a con, and does not have experienced people involved. And most of the time, that ends badly. Conventions are very expensive, and so, like, if you ask any con chair what their number one piece of advice they give about starting a con is, it will be one word: don't.
Or at least know what you're doing, right?
And then we will continue, but if you insist on ignoring that, like we all did, here's what you need to know.
Oh god. Yeah, and especially too, like, we talked about this last time a little bit. That you have to, like, find investors, and there's, like, a process of, like, booking the space and stuff like that. And I feel like people are just blinded by, like, oh, I want to get these people that I like, and, kind of not so much the power, but the control that they can have if they don't like a specific aspect about, like, another public convention. And then, from my understanding, it just blows up badly because, people are, flaky when don't have any experience or credibility. Yeah.
Yeah,
so.
And if you don't know how to budget, like, the way I would put it is, if you're looking to start a con, and you don't have between $10,000 and $30,000 you are willing to lose, then you do not have the budget to start a physical convention. Like, that is going to be your upfront costs that you can basically guarantee you will never recoup because it's the seed capital, and conventions almost never run sufficiently in the black that you will be able to cash that money out. In rare cases, that'll happen, but you should pretty much assume that your upfront investment is a massive charity donation.
Right. Is that a tax write-off?
You probably, well, it would depend, I think, on the convention organization. If it were a 501c3, that would be a taxable or deductible, probably. It would depend on your local jurisdiction. But, like, you know, if it were a private business, I don't know what the rules are.
Good legal question. I was just curious. You know, and
Especially,
go ahead.
Especially because I was thinking about how, particularly at least out of my experience with Brony conventions, was all of the charity work and all of the charity fundraisers and all that kind of stuff and the charity auctions. Yeah, does that all come into play again, as like a tax write-off, because it is technically you are through that doing, you know, you are doing something philanthropic, I guess you could say.
Yeah, so like charity auctions, that's pretty much always tax deductible. I mean, it's a little more complicated than that. So, you know, you have to, it's totally off topic, but you would have to donate enough money that combined with your other tax deductions, it's greater than the standard deduction, which is something like $13,000. So mathematically, you're probably looking at $8,000 to $10,000 in charity donations in a single year before you're at a point that it would make sense to itemize that as opposed to just taking the standard. Mm-hmm. And that's a good way to put it, is like, if you're at that level, talk to a tax professional because they'll be able to tell you what your best path is.
Welcome to the Art Podcast. Let's talk about taxes.
Indeed. But I mean, it will come up with any physical con. Like, that's one advantage the online ones have, is it's a whole lot easier to do it without ever legally incorporating, because you don't really have to sign contracts in the same way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and especially if you're just kind of like, let's have a gathering and we'll all live stream at the same time, there can be a lot of flexibility with format, from what I can imagine, or what I've kind of seen throughout the internet so far.
Yeah, like an online convention, literally your startup cost can be nothing. And then from there, it's your initial costs are things like Zoom licenses, you know, that allow you to put on a more professional looking presentation. But the costs for an online convention are going to be dramatically lower across the board.
I feel that.
Yeah, I was wondering that because after attending Lightbox online this year and this was only the convention's second year running, and their second year they had to go entirely online. They did most of their panels, I guess you could say, were Zoom calls, and that, yeah, I was curious about that because, yeah, with I guess with Zoom licenses, how long have you been working with in terms of online conventions? How long have you been working with licenses like that for? Especially because I know it helps ensure like larger amounts of people in one call to be able to attend it.
Yeah, I mean, Zoom specifically, we actually use that internally at BronyCon all the way back in 2017, 2018 or so. So, and then my professional job, as soon as, COVID hit, we all started using it there as well. So for online, it was kind of an obvious solution in my case to utilize Zoom, since its biggest advantage is that it's just really convenient for a lot of people. Almost everybody has it installed at this point. So you can usually give your special guest, just say, hey, join the Zoom call at this time. And depending upon how sophisticated your event is, depends upon how seamless the experience is from there. A lot of the work on an online convention at this point is behind the scenes, and it's focused on making the experience seamless for like the average user. It's easy to do things that are user unfriendly, but it's hard to do it, and it's extremely hard to put on an online convention in a way that is friendly for like the attendees.
Mm-hmm. Can you walk us through the steps of like starting, or your process of starting? You started what's the name? Ponyfest?
Ponyfest, right? Online, yes.
Okay.
If you go to ponyfest.horse, you can see our website.
That's great.
.horse is the best domain for any pony convention. I think it'll be terribly popular in the future.
You're not wrong. Like, people won't forget it.
Mm-hmm. It's a lot easier to remember.
Not even kidding. That is the URL because I just tried it.
Oh yeah, I mean,
I love it.
We have. I think you can even like go back from version 4 to version 3 to version 2 to version 1 of the website. I haven't tried to see if that option still exists. Let's see. There's looking for the 3.0 website, looking for the 2. Yep. So you can just keep on clicking links at the very bottom to go back to the older versions of the website.
Oh, that's great. Anyway, so like, so using your experience doing real life cons, like what are your steps? Like, what do you do first as far as like buying the license for the website, like doing Zoom?
Step 1 is going to be recruitment. Like, an online convention is at a bare minimum, a 20 to 30 person job. So unless you have the ability to recruit a core staff, which in the case of Ponyfest, I started off finding, you could think of it as audio-visual because you need a way to broadcast, design because any online event lives or dies based on its branding, public relations and social media because it doesn't matter how good your branding is without someone who knows how to get it out there. Our Discord head, since Discord is just extremely convenient for serving as an online venue, and then your website, like it kind of expands your events head. You can just see me go, or I really should just pull open Ponyfest so I can look at the department list and go from there. But yeah, like at your core, the question is, what's your event gonna be? For example, for Ponyfest 1, we targeted, a single stream. And as a result, we only needed to curate for that. We didn't open content applications the first time around because we were able to fill it all, through our collective contacts. And that kind of, I think, was a really good strategic move at the start because it meant that our first stream was sort of a best of the best and instantly set us apart. But yes, recruitment. And then from there, and even more so, experienced recruitment wherever possible, because that's just going to save you time and effort. If you don't know 4 to 6 people who either are willing to spend a lot of time learning together or already have the skill set, then your first thing to do is go make friends.
Friendship is magic, I guess.
And will keep you from going insane by having to literally run everything yourself. Friendship is mental health.
Oh yeah. I mean, it truly is team effort. It's a team effort.
Yeah, I'm just going over the mental list of like who's burned me by saying they can do more than they actually can, and then I have to go in and fix it, and it's great. So
yeah, like you could think of it as compared to a physical convention, your Discord server, if you're running it through there, sort of clash or combines your venue, your security, all of the stuff that depends upon physical space, like simultaneously is the most expensive and is gone, and also kind of the most upfront work. That, by what I mean is, you need to finish a lot of the physical stuff before you can successfully announce to look legitimate. Whereas online, I mean, we literally announced 2 days after I had the idea to do the thing. But we were also able to do it in a single week because we didn't have to make any contracts, we didn't have to negotiate with anyone. We were able to work on everything in parallel. Whereas in a physical event, you're going to start kind of getting, well, I can't do this until this other thing finishes. And that's why physical events usually have about a year before they do another one. Because you never know when you'll get log jammed for literally a month or longer.
Yeah, I just imagine those actor contract negotiations can be like tricky sometimes.
The most challenging thing is getting people to respond. Actors and agents are busy.
I do things on the internet. I know that feel. Or just people like agreeing to do something, and then you have to kind of babysit and be like, not in a way that's like insulting, but like, hey, like that thing you're supposed to do, like, do you have time to talk about it? I see you tweeting. I know you're online, like, so.
Yeah, like, the reality is for conventions are kind of advertising for the talent. So as a result, it's not usually the way they make a lot of money. It's nice supplemental income, but they and their agents both are going to be focused on getting more acting gigs. And yeah, that can make it a challenge to, stay in steady communication as a result.
That's fair.
Because you're kind of competing with them, or you're kind of competing with their main job in a weird way.
That makes sense. Have people gotten a lot of acting gigs through their convention appearances? Like, do you know that in general?
It's, I would say where the convention's benefit is about, raising your profile in a way, and kind of, if I were talent, that's a good way to put it. The reason I would attend conventions is, one, it would let me get to interact with other talent, so it would be a way to seek out new projects kind of through the, little black book as opposed to the checkbook in a way. And you never know when those can then turn into big paydays. It lets you connect with your fans, which honestly, I would say for a lot of the talent is the biggest draw, because that can be really affirming to see how the work you do is meaningful to people.
Yeah.
And hey, it's a fun excuse to travel somewhere they might not otherwise have the money to travel to. So yeah,
that's valid.
I would say it's not the primary way by any means that talent would seek to get new roles of any kind, but if they know how to play the game right, it can definitely help.
Thanks, Andrea.
And it would help the most if you're just starting out.
I mean, it makes sense that a lot of like pony VAs who have been like in a couple episodes or 1 or 2 episodes, but their character is very popular and they go to convention, like they could kind of, make it a nice side hustle too and being out there. And I know a lot of I know Peter and I know a lot of people and Andrea, like I just mentioned, or go to cons a lot just to kind of connect and kind of, meet everyone. I think it's kind of neat, so.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's a way, if you're a professional, to tap into a segment of your fan base and kind of your whole career that only really exists in that space.
Okay, so I guess so you make contacts and then you launch the website, and then you use Zoom. Like, how do you encode stuff from Zoom to the website and like scheduling, and how does that all work?
Sure, it's going to be different based upon what each event runs. If you look in the space, it's pretty common that most people are broadcasting to one of either Twitch, YouTube, or Discord. And using that as kind of using their infrastructure, honestly, to relay it to everybody else. Then from there, it's a question of, and then to interact with all of those, well, Discord, you literally can just screen share and you're done. So, like, if you're in a Zoom call, it's very simple in Discord. You hit screen, you select the right window, poof, you're broadcasting it. For Twitch, you're using a software suite like OBS or Streamlabs, and you can also do that for other ones like, YouTube, but Twitch is going to be the go-to if you want to be broadcasting an actual stream that anyone can tune into. And then, like, for Ponyfest, for example, we kind of have a complicated setup, and this is because, getting technical for a moment, in Twitch's case, you could think of it like at an ordinary convention, you have panel rooms.
Right.
So a panel ends, the panelist leaves, the next one comes in. If it's a really popular panel, like as in your main events hall that's just full to capacity every event, staff will clear the room so that, other people can see the next one. But like at smaller panels, you don't need to clear the room because there's always empty space. So the key here is it's easy to switch out panelists. Like literally one walks off, the next one walks in.
Right.
Online, that's not the case because, for example, on Twitch, it's person A stops broadcasting, person B starts broadcasting, and as an attendee, that means you have to be paying attention to refresh the window. You know, and YouTube's the same way. You might have to keep jumping to different channels. Like, it's not the same seamless user experience. So for PonyFest, we actually have everybody send it to an RTMP server. Hi, staff. If I got the acronym wrong, I apologize. I'm not natively an AV person. And then from there, we, do some overlays on it. Like, that's where our branding is applied. We have an ad module so that we can advertise our vendors. We have the ability to, play music, and kind of all of that is handled through our control panel. And then the control panel is what outputs to Twitch. And the advantage to that is it allows us to have people send us the info. We can then switch it over on the back end, and we never have to shut down our Twitch stream as a result. So for a user, it turns into a television station. They turn it on, and they can leave it on. And I do think that is really good, and also took an entire month of development time to pull off. So it's kind of a unique advantage we have.
Oh yeah, like just explaining it, like it makes a lot of sense because I know before COVID, a lot of conventions would be messy because people would be hosting on YouTube streams and they'd be hosting on Discord, and you kind of had to like figure out where everyone was going to be and what they were streaming on, and if that was something you needed to install, and like a whole thing. So that just seems like a smart way to do it, and that way you don't have to worry about like, please refresh the page, or like this stream is starting, like you need to click on this button. So
Yeah, we've helped out one or two other events like that. We've allowed them to kind of use our setup, and I think it was known as Powered by PonyFest at the time. And so definitely Powered by PonyFest at the time. And so definitely I obviously believe in it since my event uses it. But yeah, like creating what's going to set you apart there, and this is kind of taking it down the road, is that's about creating a fun and seamless experience for your attendees.
Right.
Because if they have to do a lot of work to come to your event, they're just going to go, this is too much effort, and go do something else. Making your barrier to joining as small as possible is honestly extreme. It's very basic when you hear it outlined, and yet a ton of online events don't seem to understand this.
I think it just, like, the process has just been simplified as far as, like, streaming in general, or, like, that people just take it for granted that they have to be at different places. But for someone, like, maybe someone who's not used to using a computer, for instance, or doesn't know, like, the I guess the most up-to-date streaming services, like, if you don't know what Twitch is, and you're just like, what the fuck is a Twitch? It's like, is that, like, a drug that the kids are on to, something like that? Then, having, like, the easiest way would be like, it's like a TV, Grandpa, and they're like, oh, okay, I can watch the Pony Show on my new TV. It's just called Twitch, so,
Yeah, and you can think of it too, like, think of your guests, a lot of them aren't AV savvy, so, like, you can't reasonably expect everybody to know how to set up OBS and then do an output to your server. Especially for your voice actors and, your other creatives who work in the field professionally. Like, first off, they're going to have Zoom already. And second off, the more work you ask them to do, the more likely they'll tell you to piss off. So, when the work is join the Zoom call,
click the button.
It's a lot easier to keep them happy.
Yeah, I imagine. I imagine, like, all the pony guests in general are relatively easy to work with at this point if they've been doing, like, conventions, like, before this. But, I imagine there's some, like, curmudgeons who are not used to this, or, like, they're dependent on, convention funds. And
I would say online.
Yeah.
it's going to be a lot about who, for lack of a better way to put it, who in your event already has a direct relationship with talent.
Yeah, you're right.
And because, like, a lot of the way we've found guests through Ponyfest is our staffers are friends with them, and so they're literally able to, just poke them casually and be like, hey, I mean, the show director of My Little Pony, that's how we went about it. I just was like, hey, I want to ask you some stuff. Can I DM you? And we went from there the first time around.
Was this Jim?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I've worked with him before at other events, so he knew who I was. So it made it a lot easier to get him on board because a lot of the people that he'd be interacting with, he's known for years. He knows we already have an established positive relationship.
Right.
But a startup event doesn't have that, so you don't have that same existing credibility to kind of trade in on.
Right. Yeah, it just makes everyone feel better if, it's like someone that has done this before, so you're not kind of gambling your time or your energy, because just kind of hearing through being around, putting conventions, learning that there's three main agents, or three or four, that like this person does this talent and this person does this talent, and you can kind of hear through the grapevine who is realistic to bring before even approaching them. Correct.
Yeah, off the top of my head right now, I'd say there's 4 major pony agents. Each of them represents a different group of talent, depending upon, honestly, how they're professionally representing them.
Right.
And some agents like working with conventions more than others.
Right.
So that will also influence which talent you see more often. Because an agent who's responsive and is into the con scene is going to get a lot more, people poking them than one who it's really hard to keep in contact with. And is going to get a lot more, people poking them than one who it's really hard to keep in contact with.
Right. And I imagine, especially for the pony guest stars that are not primarily doing pony conventions or just conventions in general, it's just kind of sometimes it can be kind of a mess to explain what a brony is and come to our pony con and they're $50 million and you're never mind. So
yeah, awesome as it would be to ask John Delancey or Tara Strong or Felicia Day to attend a Ponyfest, the reality is they're big enough names that it's going to cost almost certainly 4 figures at a minimum to recruit them even for an online event. Maybe not that much, because you'd only be hey, can we rent your time for an hour? But if you're not throwing down some serious dosh, you're wasting their time, and you're wasting your time as well.
Yeah, it's something, I've seen to learn. Let me think. Can you describe how an online vendor hall would work, from Ponyfest's experience, I guess?
Yeah, I would say that at this point it's I've seen 2 approaches to vendor halls. One was to host it on a website that pretty much just had direct links to the vendors themselves. And the other and much more popular way is you create an online vendor hall in your Discord. So it effectively serves as each artist has, a booth or a channel that serves as their booth, and they're able to set it up, as they like, which usually consists of them effectively, creating a list of their products and how to present them, and then being around and available for people to talk to, ask questions, take commissions, all of that. The most important thing for that is to not have too many artists for the number of attendees you have.
Right.
Because, it's really easy with how easy it is to accept people to oversaturate your vendor hall, and that's going to lead to a lot of disgruntled artists. We have a very high rejection rate at Ponyfest, not because we want to, but because we know that we simply can't. If we accepted everybody who applied, none of them, maybe 1 or 2 would have a good weekend, but that would be it. And exactly, you don't want to Yeah, you don't want to ask them to spend, an hour or two setting up in your space, and then to like sit there at their computer all weekend looking for PMs that never come. So as a rule, you'd want to have some idea of your engagement numbers, but I would say, like, off the top of my head, one vendor for every 100 active attendees you have. And when I say active, I mean like people who are interacting for more than 5 minutes over the course of your event, like an hour or so. If you can't engage 100 people for an hour plus, then don't have that vendor slot, which means at PonyFest we can fit between 20 and 30 people somewhat comfortably, but even then it's kind of a shot in the dark.
If anything, it's supposed to be beneficial. You don't want to be a detriment to an artist's business, and to have like an oversaturation of the market, it would be doing them a disservice. So
that makes sense. I don't know. This is interesting. I don't think I have any more questions. Lauren, do you have any questions about like how the process works?
No, I guess more or less just about how things would be going forward, because if anything, a lot of changes happened in 2020, and a lot of adaptation and evolving has happened in 2020 as a result of COVID-19, and how that's affected, conventions either postponing or being canceled or anything like that, or moving completely online, which that has proven to be the most successful route, obviously, for so many, and that's great. So I guess maybe it's more or less your thoughts on how do you think things are going to be going forward. Do you think maybe like when physical conventions pick back up again, when it's safe to do so, do you think maybe running a simultaneous online convention to that physical convention might work for some conventions that, maybe they're the bigger ones, and it's like if there's something that's held in a certain area and people can't go, but they want to be able to participate somehow, and so they have online content, I guess you could say. What do you think?
So I would say it both depends upon, one, the type of event you are. And to quick explain that, like, you have the really big ones, Anime Expo, San Diego Comic-Con, the ones that can draw in 20,000 to 100,000 people to their events. Bluntly, they pretty much all have completely failed to move successfully into the online space. Like, most of them did online events and had significant talent present at that, but if you kind of look at even the public viewing numbers and the social media reaction, you realize that it was pretty much a complete flop in all cases. So, the big cons, like, in really most events, do not understand the online space. The number one mistake people are making if they have a physical event that they try and move online is that they try and replicate the physical event online, like, straight up, without sitting there and asking, how does being online change our core experience, and how should we change how we present our content to, work with that? The smaller cons, the ones that have less than 10,000 people attending, by and large have also failed to do this, but some have understood that principle more successfully than others. It's the online-only ones also mostly have failed to recognize this, but yeah, you need to be, for the online space right now, you need to be thinking of your event as primarily online and asking yourself, what can I do differently now that I'm digital to create a better experience and a more compelling experience for your attendees? Going forward, what I think that's going to translate into in a post-COVID landscape is that some of the online conventions are almost certainly going to stick around, because there are a few inherent advantages to being online, which is, number one, it's extremely easy to attend. In fact, in PonyFest's case, we have a large Spanish contingent, a large European contingent. Like, we draw people from all over the world. And, for a physical convention, people have to travel to that location.
Oh, yeah.
And that also means that I think where online conventions are going to succeed is because they work really well for people who, suffer from social anxiety, since it's a lot less anxious to, like, tune into a stream or, join and lurk in a server. You can kind of wait around until you feel comfortable with engaging with people.
Right.
And so on. But, bluntly, online cons aren't really going to take off with existing technology because it's not there yet.
Right.
When online cons are going to dominate is when VR becomes cheap and easy to work with. And at that point, prediction is while they will not replace physical cons by any means, they're going to become a whole lot more compelling to attend. And I suspect that when that day comes, we'll start seeing some online events ultimately killing smaller and less well-run physical events because, they're able to outcompete them. But the biggest ones, like, to take Anime Expo, they have 100,000 people who attend that. That gives them a budget in the millions of dollars, which allows them to, stage events that are simply impossible to put on at any other event. So that gives them an inherent advantage that really nobody else can match right now, and pretty much assures that they're going to remain existing. San Diego Comic-Con's the same way. But take Otakon. Not to bully them by any means. I love you guys. I'm just picking you as the first medium big anime con to come to mind that I could conceive that some of them are ultimately going to lose out to the VR experience in 10 to 30 years.
I feel like...
It's like, I just imagine... Go ahead.
Oh, no, you go.
I was just gonna be like, I just imagine Dex, and she's just, like, in her, like, evil lair, and she's just like, how are we gonna, like, outdo all the conventions? Soon I will, like, take over the convention market, mwahaha, but, like, a nicer way, because she's nice.
That is my prediction that I could be completely wildly off on, but nah, I just want the biggest idol convention.
I feel like what a good step forward was, at least based off of what I experienced, was a positive step forward in terms of, I guess, VR in a way, or augmented reality, was Lightbox's Artist Alley. Because they did have like a virtual vendor hall where you would walk, or I guess you could say hop between, you would go up and down all these aisles of artists and what would be their little booths in a virtual hall somebody made in like VR. And so I think that was really cool. I hadn't seen that really implemented too much before. And yet it made total sense. So, and so that at the same time, it still kind of replicated that feeling of being in a hall and going from table to table, looking at people's different, banners and stuff like that. And instead of having a table with merchandise in front, the interactive the backdrops they would normally have for their tables became interactive with little hot links embedded in different icons or pictures or anything like that on the backdrop, which I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, like, riffing on that really quickly, like, if you had the tech behind it, you could even make it that booth changes for each individual approaching it. Like, since if you think of them as screens, it could be set to display something differently depending upon who is seeing it, because it's digital. Like, you could have 10 people standing at the booth, and they might be seeing different things on the screens in the same quote-unquote spot, based upon how they're interacting with it.
That's cool. That would be really cool.
But that's what I mean, where, like, the technology really isn't there yet to support that. Like, I know of a con that ran in Minecraft, and they built an entire convention center in Minecraft, which was super cool. And then they found out that, like, the server didn't do so well under load once they got past, 50-ish people. I don't remember the exact number. But, like, it turned out there were major technical limitations that they really couldn't foresee that kind of capped the number of people who could interact in that space.
Oh, man.
That's just sad.
And that's where, yeah, the tech needs to both grow and also become more affordable. Because right now it's like, what, $800 or something to buy the VR gear, and then you need a system capable of running it.
Mm-hmm. Play Rick and Morty in VR. Like, that's the only thing I know that like I might buy. But it's
Yeah, like until you can spend, say, the cost of like a PlayStation or an Xbox and get a working VR setup, that's gonna be when it begins taking off.
Well, that's an interesting way to think about it. So if people wanted to attend, online conventions in general, where would be a good place to kind of look and kind of keep their eye out for stuff? Like, is there a general like congregate of like lists of like furry cons, pony cons, anime cons, or is it just more like checking like your favorite con social media and be like, hey, we're online this year, we're here, click here?
Yeah, I would say it's going to be dependent upon the event themselves. There's no smoke-filled room that all of the convention heads across all of the fandoms exist in. I know, for example, in the pony space, there's a couple spaces that the convention chairs can kind of talk to each other, but and there may well be equivalents to that with anime conventions and furry, since I'm not as tuned into those spaces.
Mm-hmm.
But most of it's going to be, through individual social media and kind of through, your friends. So the best way, really, would be if you have friends who like attending cons, go talk to them, because they'll know, which ones are kind of doing that.
Yeah, I was just curious if like someone, because I know there's like several websites that like just group all the conventions by like type and like who's gonna be there and like what kind of events they're gonna have. So I was wondering if there's anything like that yet for just like online only cons or like a collaboration, but I guess not yet.
Not that I'm aware of, but it could be that. I mean, I know there is one for Pony, I should say, that someone kind of maintains individually because they find it fun. Mm-hmm. But I also don't think many people know about like the countdown clock or whatever it is.
Right.
Yeah. I also think about how many are generated a year in terms of conventions, big and small, that it would kind of be hard to keep track of all of them in one place.
That too. There've already been like in ponies in really all of the spaces. If you go back to March, April, there was a massive surge in online events starting that lasted through May, June, and then began rapidly declining as people simultaneously realized it was a lot of work and the market got oversaturated very quickly. And now that winnowing is continuing, but the long-term winners have not fully emerged yet.
Mm-hmm. So it's just
I suspect that we at Ponyfest are, doing just fine, and there's a couple others I think are doing just fine, but where it's gonna go from now depends upon, where the events choose to go. And like the best thing is probably going to be smaller targeted events. So like rather than doing a full convention, what I believe online events should be doing is turning themselves into more of an ongoing venue that every 2 to 8 weeks is doing a single engagement thing. So like having one weekend be a gaming tournament and another one being a concert and another one being, your like some presentations and panels, and only doing 1 or 2 main events per year that try and fit everything in. And the reason is Discord servers can pile up rapidly, or really any venue like that. So unless you have a reason to keep people engaged on an ongoing basis online, they're going to lose interest and move on. What you need to do is build a space that they and their friends come to hang out together. And the more work you put into really becoming like that third space for people to hang out and socialize and meet new friends is going to determine who are the most successful versus not, in my opinion.
Yeah, like that. I don't know. I just find all this interesting because I think I like underestimated, like, because I was thinking just like similar, like let's just do a a shoot shit of a con and we'll post it all on Discord. What could possibly go wrong? But like, talking about branding and like, website design, I'm just like, that's actually a good way to do it. It's like these people know what they're doing.
Yeah, like, easy example, Ponyfest exists because tons of my friends are vendors. So COVID hit, I instantly began hearing, them talking about bills. Because, like, their livelihood just went poof.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why I started Ponyfest, was a way to try and recreate the full con experience, because another artist had already created the digital vendor hall, and I looked at that and went, this is cool. What it's missing is a reason for people to come in and engage with it apart from the vendor hall. And that's where Ponyfest came from, was let me build an event around this to draw people in so they see what's for sale here. But where the branding really came in, and I was not expecting this at the start, was our mascots. Like, merchandise for them is really popular, and at Ponyfest we're not out to make money ourselves, so our role is, if you want to make merchandise with our mascots, run it by us for approval, and once we approve it, you're good to sell it. And bitrate stuff has been a huge money maker for a bunch of artists, like, compared to their pre-existing goods, because it was something new and related to the event. So, like, it gives people something to buy that links them to the positive memories of that event. People spend money on experiences, and when you want to buy, like, physical goods, the most compelling physical good is something that reminds them of an experience, so that every time they see it or pick it up or interact with them, their mind, runs back to that feeling and that sort of glow of what it felt like, at that date and time. And that's why they keep spending money.
Yeah, and that's kind of like tying back to, I'm like, for me and my vending, I'm very particular, like, people are very particular about what they want to buy in general, especially with like a big market. Like, I'm probably not going to do it this year. I've been toying with it, but, LA Comic-Con, there's like, I think 1,000 vendors there, and no one's going to buy stuff for me. But, especially if they don't recognize the branding, or they're just like, what is this? Like, and it's good advertisement. Like, if people are taking business cards, or I give kids like little treats or something like that, or, like, people enjoy that. But like, the biggest thing is like the commissions, and like, specifically parents getting commissions for their kids, like, of a character that they like, or them as a character or whatever, because it relates to that experience, where something like, just, something that's already available online widely, might not have a similar kind of interaction, I guess, with the buyer. So
yeah, it's a combination of that, and then the other thing, honestly, the two factors that are, or I guess three. If I were a vendor, if I were like, let me put myself as, if I wanted to teach myself to draw to where I could start selling things, and this is kind of related to the con space, because it is how you make money in that as a vendor. Step one, and most important, is going to be becoming a skilled artist. Like, never stop practicing, never stop seeking out new critiques and ways to improve both your technique and how fast you can do it. To give a shout out to one artist, like, if Imolu worked in commissions, she could charge a ridiculous amount of money per commission, but because of how fast she works, her, like, hourly wage would be insane. Whereas I know other artists who produce the same quality she does, but takes 10 times as long to do it. So that's going to be step one, is that formula of how good is your work and how fast can you put it out. Step two is your personal brand. How are you interacting with people, and that's honestly going to be how interesting and likable can you make yourself to an audience. That's going to vary person to person. It's going to depend upon, your own unique skills and how comfortable you are with all of that. And then step three is economics, by which I mean learning how to price your work, which really is a very simple thing in my mind, at least for commission art. If you're getting fewer commissions than you want, start running sales and discounts. If you have as many commissions as you want, awesome. And if you have more commissions than you want, raise your prices. Very few artists follow those principles if you actually look at it.
Yeah, and especially I imagine, like, you know, a lot of artists have egos too, and they're just like, my art is worth $1 million, and even if it's beautiful, like, you know, it just depends on, like, the consumer, and, like, are they gonna actually spend that money, you know, depending on, you know, how likable the artist is and how well they engage with them, or, you know, lots of factors.
Yeah, how well known they are, how many other artists are making similar products, like, being first to market for something is always big. You know, if you look in any fandom space, you'll often see within a couple days of a new character coming out, the first people to make products of that character can often sell them for huge markups. But that's only for, like, the first couple things. You know, for those people who really vibed with it and instantly are like, I want this and I want to have it ASAP. And it's super, I mean, I guess it's just doing your research and kind of understanding the space that you're working in. Like, going back to earlier, if you want to work in anime goods, you're going to be competing with extremely high quality official merchandise, and that's going to make it a lot harder to sell things because the official merch is going to be priced sometimes cheaper than you can afford to sell it at. So, and if you look at it from a customer's perspective, why would I as a customer want to spend $20 to buy bootleg art from somebody if I can spend $15 to buy the official thing that's just as good? Like, and yeah, which is why shipping prints are great, commissions are great, anything that's unique is kind of the niche for the fan artist there, where the official goods are good. You should be working probably in one-of-a-kind stuff that can't be replicated. You know, you need to find that niche.
Man, this is just making me miss cons more.
Yeah, it's like, I wish I'd put in the effort to draw and stuff, because I do enjoy the marketing and the business of it, but I have nothing to market and sell. Mm-hmm. And, like, it doesn't work nearly as well when you're selling somebody else's stuff for them, because...
Right. I remember one year at BronyCon, someone had a shirt that everyone loved that's like, I'm not the artist, but I can ring you up.
Yeah, that. It
was my favorite thing.
Exactly. Like, I've worked at friends' booths before, you know, to let them go to the bathroom or go to lunch, and it's like, attendees will come up and be like, oh, hey, I really love your art. And you just sit there for a moment and go, do I want to impersonate them for kicks, or do I want to be honest?
Right. I remember, like, sometimes when I have team people, staff, booths in general, and I'm, like, going to the bathroom, or, like, I have to do a panel or something like that. I remember one time, I don't remember, Lauren, if you saw this, but we had to get, like, buttons for, like, some of the team members that said not KP, because people would just assume they were KP, like Victoria, and especially some of the female team members. And so it was funny. I think my last note, if Lauren doesn't have any questions, and I'm good too, do you have any, like, funny stories you want to share that, like, maybe you haven't told that you feel comfortable telling that might be a fun way to end? Tell me all the John Delancey stories.
Sure. I mean, let's see. One of my favorite things is from, well, I don't have any online ones. The only John story that leaps to mind is just one time, you know, at a con where he plopped down where I was, like, in a backstage area and was just like, so, what do you do? And we ended up talking about, you know, shooting the shit for a few minutes until his agent came in and had some business-related thing to tug him into. But, I mean, part of that, the story I will tell at Ponyfest that still amuses me to no end is at our second event, we had a writer's panel that was kind of a game show thing. We were doing Pony Family Feud. That was it. And there was a question like, name ponies who live in Ponyville or who are from Ponyville, something like that. And Larson was up, and he couldn't get the final answer. Like,
Can you give some background on who Mitch is for people who don't pony real quick?
Sure. So, M.A. Larson, Mitch Larson, was one of the writers for My Little Pony from seasons 1 through 5, who is just an extremely gregarious dude. Like, he's hilarious, he loves going to conventions, he's infamous for signing anything, to the point where, you know, conventions have gotten in trouble before because he has signed physical property of the venue that the venue was not happy having signed.
Oh, gosh. I mean, he did sign I did say, I think I might have mentioned it in a previous podcast, he did sign a celery stick when I was at BronyCon, at the very last BronyCon, and a group of us were sitting at a table at this like pub nearby, and he happened to be there at another table. He walked over, and we're like, can you just like sign this? It's like, here's a napkin, and then he's like, here, I'll sign this too, and he just grabs one of the celery sticks off of our like buffalo wing plate and just signs it.
Yeah, I mean, I've witnessed him sign a bus. I know he signed a baby. I've seen him sign people. I've seen him sign a pack of instant noodles, I want to say.
I got one. Okay, he signed my face before, and he signed my mom before. So there you go.
And you didn't get it tatted?
My mom just kind of, she's like, okay, I'll go along because this is something that my daughter is in on that I don't understand. But Mitch thought it was funny, so.
And so he was playing Family Feud, and the idea here is he probably, among the writers, he was easily one of the ones who knew the most about the world of My Little Pony. Like, some of the writers, they only do 1 or 2 episodes. Other writers fall in love with the world, and he was one of the ones who loved the world and so knew it in and out. Which meant that when he failed this Family Feud question, he was just like, what the hell? And Amy Keating Rogers just chimes in and drops like an F-bomb or some other curse word, which back in the day when our content rating was PG, was immediately led to fan art of like our mascot saying Ponyfest is a fun and family-friendly convention, and then Amy Keating Rogers is like Pony OC in the immediate next panel sitting there going shit with a giant smile on her face. And I love that moment was immortalized in fan art. That's probably my silly, dumb fun story.
That's how you know you made it.
It's the infamous moments that you love and over again, because they're the ones, it's the divergent things that you weren't expecting to happen. Those are the ones you like to remember the most.
Oh god, yeah. How can I talk about Ponyfest without mentioning Fuff?
I don't understand that, so.
That one I can explain. So,
okay.
Very easily. Fuff goes all the way back to our very first convention, which had a bad fan fiction reading panel. And fun was misspelled as Fuff. And for whatever reason, everyone seized on that, and it became, just spammed all over the place. If you go in the Ponyfest server now, we have multiple Fuff, oh wow, why am I blanking at emojis, thank you, that you can use, because it's such a strong part of our identity at the moment. But like, it totally emerged at Ponyfest 1.0 spontaneously. Like, we as staff had nothing to do with it. We just went, all right, let's run with it.
Right.
And that's kind of what I would say is advice in general, is that if you're going to disregard all of the don't do this, you know, it's exhausting, it's a ton of work, you're going to lose money as part of it, like, you do it because you love the scene. And as long as you kind of keep that in mind, it's like, this is a product of love, and everyone involved in it really is engaging with it out of love, and you just let things develop along those principles, you'll probably go in the generally right direction.
Right. I mean, that's, like, how TrotCon like started to take off too, is because they just made memes, and it just kind of blew up from what I gathered from the outside looking in.
Anyways, come to TrotCon.
Yeah. So okay, so where can people find you and Ponyfest if they're interested in that. And anything else you want to plug, feel free.
Sure, so you can find me on social media pretty much everywhere as Dexanth. That's Dexanth. And for Ponyfest Online, if you just Google Ponyfest Online, that is also our Twitter identity. Our website is over at ponyfest.horse. And yeah, Twitter is probably the easiest place to find me personally.
That's valid. Even though Twitter is just like a mess this whole year, but it's fine. I guess we're used to it now.
I'm still at the point where my DMs are able to remain open for everybody.
For now. Dun. But yeah, I really appreciate your time, Dex, and I appreciate that, like, of all the con people, you and Scott and that kind of group have always been, like, super nice and, sincere about, not only, like, your relationship with me, but your relationship with your guests and like, the attendees in general. And, like, good people, good vibes. So, especially, like, the ups and downs of PonyCons for me these last couple of years. I really appreciate, like, you being in my corner and being a good person. So
I try and keep myself in basically everyone's corner wherever possible. For me to be like, nah, I don't want to deal with you, usually consists of, you need to be an open, unrepentant jerk.
Yeah.
And
that's a good political move.
As long as you're willing to learn, I'm usually willing to work with somebody, because we all make mistakes, we all need to grow as people, and if you don't give each other the opportunity to do that, how do people learn?
Mm-hmm. That's a good way to put it. As long as people are open to that, I think, which, again, like, it's a part of growing up and all that stuff. But yeah.
Look, my personal advice, do not pick Celestia as the pony to model yourself over. It turns out bad because you turn into mom for everybody.
Mom horse, come help me, I'm confused. All right.
I jest about it, but it's only half joking.
Oh Lord. Anyway, so as far as us, if you're new or you're seeing us through ponies and you're like, I forgot KP still existed, I'm just like, well, welcome to the Halloween time. Unless you're watching this like a year later, it's fine. So we're on all the social media too for the podcast. It's at the KP Podcast on Twitter and Instagram. And then, make sure you most people listen to the podcast on YouTube, honestly. Like, but, we're on SoundCloud and, like, Spotify and shit, if that's, like, where you want to go to listen to people. I don't know. It's, pretend you have friends and, put speakers up and it's fine. No, I've been seeing posts where people are like, oh yeah, like, I'm not seeing people, so I'm just going to listen to the podcast to pretend there's people in the room so I feel less alone because 2020. And I'm just like, that's so sad. But yeah, so, wherever you want to listen to us, it's fine. Again, YouTube, and maybe we'll live stream stuff whenever we can figure this stuff out, maybe, I don't know. And then obviously watch the main channel. That's where we're putting all our energy, and tell your friends about it, all 2 of you who didn't come from there anyway. But yeah, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on the KP and Friends show, I guess. So
thanks everybody, and bye
bye everyone.
Thank you so much for listening to Animation Kimmunication on YouTube, Spotify, or your favorite podcast provider. We are really hoping this show makes a difference in how people view animation and media, as well as giving and providing advice for people all over the world who like or want to join the animation or media industry. If you liked what you heard, please remember to subscribe and rate those 5 stars, as well as tell your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to our main YouTube channel, I Love Kim Possible a Lot, and turn those notifications on. My name is Scribbler, and you have been listening to Animation Kimmunication.